Meanwhile, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is in Israel today. He is meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. They'll discuss Hamas's response to the latest proposals about hostage releases and ceasefire. The Qatari Prime Minister says he's optimistic that a deal could be reached soon. Here's what President Biden had to say about all of this yesterday. Watch.
There's been a response from the opposition, but yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas, but it seems to be a little over the top. We're not sure where it is. There's a continuing negotiation right now.
Joining me right now is former Naval intelligence officer, from a Bush administration official, and the Bramer Group chairman, Don Bramer. Don, good to see you. Thanks very much for being here today. Your reaction to this, we've got two wars underway. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken now in Israel, meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu, as this administration continues to try to get Israel to back down, to do a ceasefire, to stop retaliating from the worst attack Israel has seen since the Holocaust.
Well, good morning, Marie. It's always glad to be back. You know, there's a lot going on right here, and as you said, we have two wars going on. But what I see is a very weak administration. Secretary Blinken just continues to appear more and more passive, and there's no deterrent strategy. So I don't understand why Netanyahu would even want to listen to Netanyahu, because, you know, the Hezbollah, the Hamas continue to play their game and move forward. The reason Hamas is coming forward with this large deal is that they need the time to restructure, and they need time to recover their debt. So it's a big ask for this 134-month ceasefire, but they just continue. Will they even hold true to this offer? You can lay a lot on the table, but can you control your own people to do what they say they're going to do? Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Houthis are warning that they're going to escalate the attacks on ships in the Red Sea if the, quote, brutal aggression against Gaza does not stop. The Iranian-backed group fired 6 ballistic missiles at ships yesterday. 3 fired at a Greek-owned ship in the Gulf of Aden, the USS Laboon shooting down one of those missiles. The other 3 were fired at a UK-owned cargo ship, marking the 48th attack since November 19th, Don. When I spoke with President Trump the other day, he said he's expecting inflation to start spiking again because of these attacks in the Red Sea. That, look, this is forcing these ships to go around the Africa Horn. It's going to be much more expensive to deliver the goods because of the extended trip they're taking to avoid the Red Sea. And that's going to be passed on to consumers. How significant are these attacks, and what do you want to say about it? What should be the response?
Well, these attacks are significant, and it is going to drive up costs. You know, our economy's been in trouble for the last 2 to 3 years. What I look at this is Hamas, Houthis, all these groups, they have become, for lack of a better word, Iran's bad children. You know, they've been given their allowance money, and now they can't control them. So to me, it's one of two things. Either the Hamas and Houthis are going to continue to do what they want, or Iran just doesn't have control of them, and we're not putting enough pressure on Iran.
What about China? And of course, we know that China and Iran are aligned in all of these things. A U.S. delegation of Treasury officials is in Beijing now, telling Chinese officials during 2 days of meetings in Beijing that Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen wants to visit the nation again this year. The officials also raising concern over China's industrial policy practices and overcapacity. The foreign minister of China saying that the Beijing side raised its worries about U.S. tariffs, investment restrictions, and sanctions, Don. I mean, China is undermining us at every turn, and yet we keep sending more officials to Beijing to talk about economic issues. Your thoughts?
Well, I think this administration continues to look for that perfect photo op. You know, China's economy, it's having its own issues. Unemployment's up, inflation's down. You know, their largest real estate developer, Everglade, has been forced to liquidate. So they're looking for every way out that they can to save themselves, and we're just walking in and taking a Polaroid, and it just seems to not be working as we move forward. But then on the other hand, you have China, Russia, and Iran coming out and telling NATO, you want to play army, you want to play soldier, well, we can do that too.
Well, you know, at this point, the president really has not responded to all of the aggression coming out of communist China, Don. I'm wondering what your thoughts are in terms of what the proper response should be to China. I recognize we are, intermingled in terms of our economies, but they've been undermining us now, Biden's entire presidency, sending a surveillance balloon in to surveil Americans and steal information from our military installations. Obviously, there was a major COVID cover-up, still no accountability from the cover-up of COVID, intellectual property theft, police stations, fentanyl. The list is long from our number one adversary against America.
Maria, that is a very long list, but the sad part, it's all very true. What troubles me is allowing China to purchase farmland, near our bases. I think that Congress needs to step in at some point, if this administration is not going to, and put some restraints on China. Hopefully in the next administration we can reverse a lot of these policies on day one. China's run amok, and we continue to just overlook it. There's no deterrence, whether it is China, whether it is Iran or Russia. This president just looks the other way, and as we saw a few minutes earlier in the tape, it's hard for this president to even get a sentence out.
Yeah, and President Trump dealt with China with sanctions and tariffs. Is that the only answer to, hit them economically with sanctions and tariffs, or are there other things you think that should be done to keep communist China in check?
There's always a long list of things that we can do that we have to go at very measured stakes. But one of the best ways to control somebody is through their wallet, and I think hitting that pocketbook, especially with the issues that China sees with its own economy, is the very first place to step. We need to look at China's economy, we need to look at Iran's economy, reduce their oil production. They're up 80% since last October, and that's 1.3 billion barrels a day in Iran. So hit them where it hurts. Hit the money.
Well, why? Aren't there sanctions in place? Why is Iran allowed to generate these billions in oil revenue? Because President Biden is not enforcing the sanctions?
Absolutely. We don't enforce a lot. We're not enforcing the sanctions. We have laws in place to protect our border, and we see how that's going. We're not enforcing those.
No.
Laws do nothing but if we don't enforce them.
Yep. Don, good to talk with you this morning. Thanks very much. Don Bramer joining us.